Imagine a medicine so powerful it could rewrite the story of life itself, a single dose that repairs the very genes driving a fatal disease. Now imagine that hope, years in the making, unraveling in a single day with just one tragic notification. A clinical trial participant has died. The world of gene therapy, a frontier with potential to cure humanity's rarest, cruelest illnesses, is facing a reckoning. And with billions of dollars, desperate families, and the future of medicine at stake, the fallout from a single failed experiment is threatening to upend everything. Today, we're digging deep into the unprecedented crisis rocking Rocket Pharmaceuticals, the biotech firm at the center of a patient death, a stock market freefall, and a regulatory system forced to question everything it believes about medical progress. Will gene therapy remain the miracle it once promised? Or is this the beginning of a darker chapter for the science that dares to play with the code of life? Let's step back for a moment. What exactly is gene therapy, and why does it inspire such hope and fear? Gene therapy is not just another treatment. It's medicine at its boldest, the attempt to edit, replace, or repair the very genes in a patient's cells that cause diseases. Imagine a world where, instead of managing symptoms, doctors deliver a single shot that targets the root cause, potentially curing devastating conditions that were once considered hopeless. From rare childhood disorders to certain types of blindness and cancers, gene therapy has been promised as the key that might finally unlock cures for the incurable. The stakes? For patients with rare genetic illnesses, ones that might kill in childhood or young adulthood, gene therapy is often the only hope on the horizon. Families follow the news obsessively, advocacy groups campaign tirelessly, and venture capital flows like never before, all for the chance at a future without the shadow of disease. But behind every headline celebrating a breakthrough is a brutal scientific reality. Editing genes is incredibly complex, and the human body's response is often unpredictable. Delivering the correct gene to the right cells means tricking the immune system, a system designed to fight intruders. Even the methods used to get the genetic material into cells, like adeno-associated viruses, AAVs, come with risks of their own, including dangerous immune reactions, infections, or, sometimes, catastrophic failures. Which brings us to Rocket Pharmaceuticals and their ambitious attempt to treat Danon disease. Danon disease is a rare inherited disorder caused by mutations in the LAMP2 gene. The result? A devastating buildup of glycogen in the heart, muscles, and sometimes even the brain. Most patients are boys and young men, and the prognosis is grim. Many die in their teens or early 20s, their hearts simply unable to keep beating. For families, the promise of a therapy that could halt or even reverse this deadly progression is nothing short of a miracle. Rocket's approach, known as RPA501, uses a modified virus, AAV9, as a delivery vehicle to carry a corrected version of the LAMP2B gene directly into patients' heart tissue. The hope is that by restoring this missing protein, the heart could begin to function more normally, buying years or even decades of life. But in early 2024, tragedy struck. Rocket Pharmaceuticals announced that a patient in their Phase 2 trial had died. The company didn't release the patient's age, but the trial focused on boys and young men with advanced Danon disease, those with little time left and few options. The immediate impact? A shudder that rippled through the entire biotech world. As details emerged, it became clear this wasn't a simple setback. The suspect? A dangerous reaction called capillary leak syndrome, a rare but severe complication where blood vessels start leaking fluid into surrounding tissues, leading to a life-threatening drop in blood pressure and organ failure. There was also evidence of a systemic infection, perhaps enabled by the immune-suppressing drugs given before gene therapy. In a single news cycle, the narrative of hope spun into something darker. Could the very therapies designed to save lives actually be putting them at even greater risk? The fallout was immediate. Rocket's stock price plunged more than 60% in a matter of hours. Investors panicked, wondering if this was the canary in the coal mine for all of gene therapy. Meanwhile, the FDA stepped in, placing an immediate clinical hold on the trial and halting both enrollment and dosing until investigators could untangle what went wrong. And so began a tense standoff between desperation and caution. On one side, families and advocacy groups continued to plead. The alternative to trying gene therapy is certain: early death. For them, the risks, while enormous, felt justified. On the other side, regulators and physicians, haunted by past tragedies in experimental medicine, worried. Are we moving too fast? How many more lives must be lost before we truly understand the dangers of tinkering with our genes? Rocket's CEO, Dr. Gaurav Shah, acknowledged the gravity of the situation in a tense call with investors. "This is the current focus, but just one idea," he said, referring to the hypothesis that the death was linked to the immune-suppressing drug regimen. But as the investigation continues, every assumption is up for challenge. The timing of this crisis could not be worse for the gene therapy field. The incoming head of the FDA's Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, Dr. Vinay Prasad, is known for his tough stance on gene therapy approvals. He has often cautioned against overhyping the science, warning that one tragic event can derail years of hard-won progress, both in the lab and in public trust. Analyst Sammy Corwin of William Blair captured the prevailing mood among investors. This drop reflects deep concerns, not only about Rocket's program, but the entire field's risk profile and the uncertainty now clouding the timeline for resolving this clinical hold. But hope lingers, even in the disaster's shadow. Some analysts and clinicians argue that, for deadliest diseases like Danon, the risk equation is different. BMO Capital Markets analysts point out that when the alternative is almost certain death by age 20, the potential for a rescue, even a risky one, can still make sense. In these cases, even a chance at extra life is worth it, they wrote. Meanwhile, skepticism grows among others. A group of Jefferies analysts warns, "A single mortality hurts the benefit-risk profile, not just for Rocket, but for the entire gene therapy landscape. Investors and physicians may now think twice." It's not just about the stock price or regulatory hurdles. This is about trust. Patients and their families need to believe that new treatments will do more good than harm. Doctors need data, clear, honest, rigorous science before risking their patients' lives. And biotech companies, under immense financial pressure, must navigate the razor's edge between innovation and caution, hope and heartbreak. The world is now watching Rocket's next move. Can they pinpoint what went wrong? Was it the gene therapy itself, the immunosuppressive drugs, or something entirely unexpected? And if they can fix it, will regulators, investors, and, most crucially, patients be willing to give gene therapy another chance? The stakes for Rocket Pharmaceuticals, and for gene therapy as a whole, have never been higher. The answers could determine not just the fate of one experimental drug, but the entire future of medicine. As the investigation deepens, a new question emerges. Are we on the verge of a course correction that will make gene therapy safer and more reliable? Or are we witnessing the beginning of an industry-wide retreat from the very edge of medical possibility? What happens next could change the lives of millions, not just those with Danon disease, but anyone who dares to hope that science can rewrite fate itself. The aftermath of Rocket Pharmaceuticals' halted gene therapy trial sent shockwaves through the entire biotech landscape. Overnight, headlines blazed with the news of a patient's tragic death and the immediate FDA hold, casting doubt over the future of gene therapy, not just for Rocket, but for an entire field that once brimmed with near-utopian optimism. What comes next? The answer isn't just about a single clinical trial or one company's fortunes. It's about whether the dream of gene therapy can weather storms like this without retreating to the margins of medicine. For decades, gene therapy was the shining promise on the horizon, a technology that could, in principle, cure the incurable by fixing genetic typos at their source. Yet, with every step forward, risk shadows progress. The Danon disease trial's abrupt stop has forced the scientific community, investors, patients, and regulators to confront some uncomfortable realities. What if the risks are higher than hoped? What if each setback pushes us further from cures we desperately want? Or, could this crisis force the field to become safer, smarter, and ultimately more successful? Let's look ahead, through the fog of uncertainty. There are at least 3 futures that experts are debating right now. The first scenario is a chilling one, a prolonged, risk-averse freeze. With the FDA's new leadership known for tough scrutiny, Dr. Vinay Prasad has publicly questioned whether gene therapy programs sometimes move too fast, chasing hope more than hard data. The regulatory environment might tighten dramatically. Clinical holds could multiply, slowing or even halting new trials. Companies, wary of liability and shaken investor confidence, might abandon gene therapy programs deemed too risky or expensive. For ultra-rare diseases like Danon, which already suffer from little commercial incentive, that could spell disaster for patients. As one analyst put it, after a death like this, the money may dry up long before the science does. A second scenario is more nuanced and perhaps more likely. Here the field absorbs the shock, adapts and continues, just at a slower, more cautious pace. Rocket investigates the death, shares safety protocols, and maybe even identifies a preventable cause, say, an immune-suppressing drug interaction or a patient predisposition to a rare reaction. Industry-wide, new standards for patient monitoring and eligibility could emerge. Regulators may require more exhaustive preclinical data, longer follow-up, and better patient selection. Innovation doesn't stop, but it becomes more careful. In this world, gene therapy matures, and each setback makes the next therapy safer. In the words of BMO Capital Markets analysts, for these diseases, the risk is real, but so is the need. Without new therapies, young lives are lost by default. Finally, there is a third, more optimistic outcome. This is the scenario where adversity breeds breakthrough. Scientists and regulators use what's learned, not just to patch holes, but to reinvent gene therapy itself. Newer, safer viral vectors emerge. Precision immunosuppression, perhaps even gene editing techniques that don't require viruses at all, get more attention and funding. The tragic death becomes a catalyst, rather than a tombstone, for the field. Companies collaborate, sharing safety findings and patient data widely. Patient groups raise their voices, demanding not just access to medicine, but also to the process of making it safer. The result? A second golden age of gene therapy, built on hard-earned lessons. The forces shaping these futures are already in motion. Financial markets, once intoxicated by gene therapy's hype, showed their brutal pragmatism with Rocket's 63% stock crash. Venture capitalists and big pharma strategists are recalibrating their next moves. Regulators are eyeing every detail of every pending trial. Patients and families, meanwhile, are caught in the middle, praying for hope, but fearing heartbreak. Let's not forget the science. Danon disease is a monster, striking boys and young men, stealing their futures before they reach adulthood. For these families, gene therapy isn't just an investment, it's a lifeline. There's no effective cure. The old road leads to an early grave. That's why, as one Danon parent said through tears, "We know the risks, we just want a chance." The risk-benefit equation isn't the same for everyone. For some, hope itself is the greatest therapy. But hope on its own is not a plan. So what practical lessons can we draw from this crisis, whether we're patients, investors, clinicians, or just future-minded citizens? First, medical progress is messy, and real breakthroughs are built on honest accounting of failure. No technology, especially one as radical as gene therapy, travels a straight line to success. The setbacks, the heartbreaks, the clinical holds, these are the checks and balances of science. When a trial fails or a patient is harmed, the entire field learns. That's why transparency matters. Companies must share not just their victories but their stumbles, openly and quickly. Only by learning what went wrong, in public, can others avoid the same pitfalls. Second, regulatory rigor is not the enemy of innovation, it's the guardian of safety. The FDA's clinical hold, though devastating, is a crucial stopgap. It forces Rocket and others to slow down and reassess, often revealing safety issues no one could see from the inside. We might chafe at bureaucracy, but consider the alternative: therapies that help a few, but hurt many. As FDA veteran Dr. Janet Woodcock once said, "The cost of going too fast is paid in human lives." Third, and perhaps most important for viewers, the real risk is not just in the therapy, but in complacency. The temptation, after a tragedy, is to give up, to focus research elsewhere. But that leaves rare disease patients stranded, with no hope at all. If the field pulls back too far, progress dies by neglect, not by accident. The challenge is to find the courage to continue, wisely but relentlessly. For parents and patients watching, stay informed, ask tough questions, and join or support advocacy groups. They're often the ones pushing hardest for both access and safety. For investors, understand that uncertainty is the price of innovation. Diversify, but don't shun risky fields out of fear. Remember, many of today's standard treatments were once radical ideas. For students and future scientists, let this story inspire you. The world needs cautious, creative minds who can turn tragedy into progress. So, can Rocket Pharmaceuticals and gene therapy itself survive this crisis, or will they retreat from the frontier? The answer isn't simple. Rocket's immediate future rests on the results of their investigation. If the cause of death points clearly to a fixable problem, an allergic reaction, a dosage issue, or a specific high-risk patient profile, then the program can likely continue, with new safeguards. If the risk appears intrinsic to the therapy or can't be isolated, broader soul-searching will follow. But gene therapy as a field will not vanish. The unmet needs are too great. The science, for all its risks, is too promising to abandon. Instead, expect a period of reckoning. More transparency, more oversight, slower progress, but progress nonetheless. Rocket's fate, and that of RPA-501, will be a bellwether for the field. Already, similar programs are being re-examined, trial protocols rewritten. What comes out of this process may be slower, perhaps at times more heartbreaking, but ultimately more robust, more ethical, and more lasting. And here's a secret fact the headlines missed. The history of medicine is filled with moments like this. The first heart transplants ended in disaster. Early chemotherapy was met with horror and mistrust too. But each time, humans learned. They adapted. Today, those therapies save millions. Gene therapy, even now, is curing diseases once deemed hopeless. Spinal muscular atrophy, some inherited blindness, beta thalassemia. Each setback, each pause, is the downbeat before the next surge forward. So as you reflect on Rocket's crisis, don't give up on the vision. Watch as the field navigates these rapids. The next chapter could be the most important yet. If you're a patient or parent, an advocate or investor, stay engaged. Ask hard questions, demand transparency, and keep hope alive, but grounded in science. What do you think? Should the field speed ahead, or is caution the better path forward? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to keep following the unfolding story of gene therapy's rise, fall, and recovery, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Science never moves in straight lines. It zigzags, sometimes painfully. But with every hard lesson, we get a little closer, not just to